My name is Charlie Laderman and I'm a lecturer in War Studies at King's College London. I'm extremely honoured that my book, Sharing the Burden, has been shortlisted for the Royal Historical Society's Whitfield Prize. The book grapples with an issue, the mass killing of an entire community and strategies for preventing it, which sadly remains as pressing as ever. I'm extremely grateful for the Society for recognising my book and for shining a light on this issue. My book explores how the US and Britain responded to the massacre of Armenian Christians in the Ottoman Empire at the turn of the 20th century. I was first drawn to this subject by the debates over humanitarian intervention in the Balkans, Rwanda and the Middle East as I was growing up in the 1990s and first decade of the 2000s. Some excellent studies were also written at this time on the history of humanitarian intervention, stretching back into the 19th and 20th centuries. And it struck me that two of the most influential books, Samantha Power's A Problem from Hell and Gary J. Bass's Freedom's Battle, The Origins of Humanitarian Intervention, converged on the massacre of the Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. So the 19th century age of humanitarian intervention ended with the failure to prevent those massacres, and an age of non-intervention began. I wanted to dig into that subject in more detail and relate it to the fundamental change in the international order that stemmed from America's rise to world power, the British Empire's relative decline, and the struggle to reshape the Middle East after the First World War. Specifically, what I wanted to explain is why the struggle for survival of one of the world's smallest nations became so entangled in the foreign policies of the two most powerful states. These themes come together in one amazing exchange that occurred at the start of the Paris Peace Conference in 1919 between T. Lawrence and the American journalist Lincoln Steffens. Steffens hopes that this exchange with a leading imperialist would offer Americans some insights into the Middle East, but Lawrence had his own agenda. He wanted America to assume responsibility for protecting the Armenians and helping them to build a new state, and he cited recent US foreign policy to support his case. He reminded Steffens that the US had annexed Hawaii, occupied the Philippines and Puerto Rico, had an informal protectorate over Cuba, and had intervened numerous times in Central America. And yet, Lawrence stated, "You are still for self-determination for small nations. You are a small empire, and you warned us in your Monroe Doctrine that you are going to be a great empire, and yet you are anti-imperialist. You have just fought a war against German imperialism. So did you," Steffens shot in. "Ah, but that is different," Lawrence replied. "We frankly call ourselves an empire, and we fought honestly for our empire against Germany's. But you fought against empire for self-determination." For Lawrence, though, this American idealism was a good thing. Americans can do whatever and not be doubted either by the world or by themselves. There is something very great about that, something useful to the world. It was only later that Steffens realised that Lawrence had loaded him up with propaganda to publicise to Americans that the US must take a League of Nations mandate for an independent Armenian state, stretching from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. And as I continued to dig into the archives, it became clear that there were many of these conversations going on in Paris between British and American officials over a mandate for the Armenians. These were part of a strategy summarised by the Colonial Secretary Lord Milner in a meeting of the British Cabinet just prior to the peace conference. An American mandate was, in Milner's terms, central to British visions of the post-war order and was seen as not a mere cloak of annexation, but a bond of union. It was designed to cement an Anglo-American colonial alliance, one of the most interesting of the forgotten ideals of the World War I period. What has previously not been appreciated is that the Near East was the crucible where that new order would be forged after the US President Woodrow Wilson agreed to accept the mandate subject to congressional assent. But Wilson's commitment came not from a desire to establish a colonial alliance, but in order to pave the way for American global leadership. My book aims to show why both American and British leaders came to see the protection of the Armenians as the key to these very different visions of a new global order. Sharing the Burden aims to explore the possibilities, limitations and continued dilemmas of humanitarian intervention in British and American foreign policy. That is not to say, though, that the debates over intervention for the Armenians and our contemporary ones are directly analogous. As L.P. Hartley said, the past is indeed a foreign country, and they did do things differently then. The imperial internationalism of a century ago has no clear analogy today, while British and American interests and security fears are certainly not directly analogous to those we face today. But some of the problems that statesmen faced were comparable, and the search for a solution to the Armenian question helps to explain those enduring dilemmas in the politics of humanitarian intervention that continues to resonate for us today.